Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. I am so glad that you're here. Today we're going to be chatting about some of the differences between conservatory programs and trainee programs and how to make the choice that's best for you. Before we kind of get started, I want to throw in a bit of a disclaimer. Obviously everything in this video is going to be based on my own experiences, which is pretty limited. I've been involved in one conservatory program and one trainee program, and in the grand scheme of things, that's not that much, and all of them are going to be very different. So make sure that you're not basing your decisions solely on the things that I talk about in this video. Make sure that you're doing plenty of research on your own, looking into the specific programs that you are interested in. And yeah, just make sure you can use this video as a tool, but don't base your decisions solely on this. So first I kind of want to talk about the different types of conservatories and trainee programs. The conservatory that I was a part of was part of a very small school where we would go for about 6 hours a day, which I feel like was a good balance right out of high school. I graduated a year early so that I could go into that program, and I would say it was definitely worth it, and it definitely gave me a lot of training, but it still wasn't quite as restrictive as my trainee program was. There are conservatories that take up more of your day and more of your week, so definitely be aware of that. And like I said, do your research, look into the specific program that you are interested in and see what their daily schedule is like. My trainee program, on the other hand, was structured more like a year-round summer intensive, basically, where I would go around 9:30 every morning, and I would be there until around 5 o'clock at night. And then I also took some classes within the school every week. So sometimes I would be there from 9:30 in the morning until like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. But of course, some trainee programs are not going to take up that much time, and you'll have more time to get part-time jobs and things like that, or to work on schoolwork if you're still in high school. But I feel like in general, conservatories where was I feel like in general, conservatory programs will probably cater a little bit more towards a high school schedule where you can still have more time to work on your schoolwork every day. And now I want to get into kind of some of the pros and cons of each of these. I think I'm going to start with the pros. She's cute, but she's devious. Aren't you? Yeah. So we're going to start off with the pros, with the pros of conservatory programs. The best thing that I kind of have to say about these is that they tend to be very technique focused, at least again in my experience. They definitely hone in on the technique side of dance, and I was really late to the ballet game. I didn't really start my ballet training until I was 14 years old, so when I graduated early at 17 and moved away, I had a lot of catching up to do still. I needed a lot of technique and things that you normally learn when you're 8-9 years old that I just never got. So having that really intense hands-on technical training was extremely helpful to me. Another thing with the conservatory that I was a part of was that they took dancers that were on the younger side as opposed to trainee programs. So while there were girls around my age, there was also, 13, 14-year-olds that were in the program with me. I think you can definitely learn from any dancer if you will watch and pick out things that you want to apply to your dancing. It was kind of weird sometimes to be dancing with like 13, 14-year-olds as a graduated senior. It wasn't bad, it was just different, and I wasn't used to being surrounded by such young people all the time, but they were very mature and very sweet, as you kind of have to be when you're a ballet dancer. You need to have that level of maturity if you're going to approach your training in that way. So I think it was really good, and they were some of my closest friends while I was there. So I've just definitely encountered other people that really prefer to have older dancers around them. They don't want to be around younger people in their training, which I don't really understand, but if that's something that you need, keep that in mind. Another pro of the conservatory route was that I definitely got more performance opportunities with that. I was involved in tons of outreach performances. I even did some competitions in the spring. We did YAGP and things like NYCDA and Radix just for fun, which obviously you're not really gonna have time with that for that in a trainee program unless they specifically train you to do YAGP, which I haven't really heard of a trainee program that does that. You would probably have to do that on your own if that's something you would really want to do. Whereas with my conservatory, it was our main focus in the spring, besides our technique classes, obviously. Funny enough though, even though we were involved in competitions, the actual environment within the studio was a lot less competitive, I think, than it is in trainee programs, which was a huge pro for me because I think healthy competition is good, but I think it can definitely get unhealthy when you're trying to like fight for promotions and things like that. It can just get really draining and it can hurt your self-confidence over time. So I definitely appreciated the lesser competitive mindset that I had within the conservatory. Moving on to the pros of trainee programs, one of the biggest one in my opinion is that they're almost always affiliated with a professional company. So when you have that affiliation, it's sort of like having your foot in the door with that company, and obviously it's not the same everywhere. You should definitely keep in mind some of them are more like an apprenticeship with the company where you're just taking class and dancing with the company. Some of them are even paid. And that's not really the kind of trainee program that I'm talking about. The other kind is when you pay tuition, and again, it's essentially like a year-long summer program where you are just focused on training, and you do have opportunities to perform with the company, but you also have your own separate training program. When you have that sort of open door, you have more opportunities to be seen alongside the company, and it's more likely that later on you can move up and progress into the main company from the trainee program. Also, one of the biggest differences I found, which again I think was kind of a pro or it could be a con depending on what you're looking for, is in the trainee program they gave a lot more focus to the artistry side of our training and not quite as much to the technical side of it. Now obviously you're probably going to get technique corrections until the day your career ends. It's just kind of how ballet works, but as a whole, we got a lot of artistic notes from our teachers and directors, things that would help us transition from student to professional. I think the intense structure of conservatories where they're so on you about technique can be a little bit limiting when it comes to that because you don't have quite as much artistic freedom. However, you can't throw in your own artistic side until you have that technique base. So both of them have roles in your career and they're both very important, but I would say if you feel like you have a very solid technical base, adding in an extra layer of artistry is definitely going to help you transition into the professional world. Another thing about the trainee program was that I was surrounded more by people my own age. So we were all in kind of the same stage of life. We had been out of high school for a year or two, and we were really hoping to get started with a company. The age range at the trainee program that I was a part of was from 17 or 18 to 22 to 24. So while it was still a pretty big age range, everyone sort of felt like they belonged because we were all trying to do the exact same thing at the time. We weren't like still in high school or something like that. Like some girls were doing college classes, some weren't, some were working, but in general, we were all ready and looking to join a company. And again, one of the biggest pros of trainee programs, which I mentioned, is that we have that company affiliation that allows us to perform with the company. So while I did get more performance opportunities as a whole when I was with the conservatory, I didn't have the opportunity to perform alongside an actual professional ballet company. And obviously that's a very, very valuable experience to have. So moving on to the cons and back to the conservatory programs, as you might easily guess, I would say the number one con of conservatories is that they don't have that professional company affiliation, usually. Because of that, you can do crazy well within your conservatory, but the best that you can do is just getting to the top of that program. There's no professional company that you could then move into from there. There's no real segue. And obviously there's probably some conservatories that do have that, but where I was, you could complete the program and then still have nowhere to go afterwards and have no real idea. There wasn't that number one place that you could go to hoping for a job. Another thing that I would probably consider a con, but again it can be helpful, is that very rigid training. Where I was, we were having multiple 3-hour technique classes every day, which is a lot. Obviously, most conservatory programs probably aren't going to have that specifically, but that's how it was where I was, and for me, that got to be a lot. And we also had strength training, contemporary classes, and things like that on top of that. Whereas in trainee programs, we still had full days, but we had our technique class in the morning, we might have a modern class or something after that, a point class, variations, something like that, and then after that, it was just rehearsing for a show. So it was a little bit structured more like a professional day. Moving into the CONSERVATORY trainee program, one of the biggest ones for me was that it was a little bit less personal than within the conservatory. When you're in a school, your teachers are definitely going to give you more specific attention within your classes, whereas in trainee programs, when everyone might be in rehearsals with a company all day, you're not guaranteed that personal attention. And you can fight for it and you might get it, but I feel like it's just harder in that setting. Again, that could be very different in other places. You might not get personal attention in a conservatory, you might get more personal attention in a trainee program in other places, but that was just how it was for me. And honestly, I do think there was some value to that because I really learned how to step up and put myself out there more. And as I mentioned before, I did feel like it was a more competitive atmosphere within the trainee class. We were all hoping to move up into the studio company. That was all of our goal that year, and we knew that they didn't take many people. So it was like the whole year was just spent trying to get to the top of the class. So in closing, if you're trying to make this decision for yourself, I would probably lean more towards a conservatory program if you are younger, maybe straight out of high school, and you just feel like you would benefit from a little bit more technical training, a little bit more personal attention before you try and make that transition into a professional company. Whereas if you've had very technical and detailed training for the majority of your high school experience, you would probably be fine to just move straight into a trainee program if that's what you would like to do. I ended up going to a conservatory program for 1 year right out of high school, and then after that I moved into 2 years in a trainee program. And I feel like that was definitely a really good route for me because I was able to get that really detailed technical training and then move into adding more artistry into it and getting more acclimated to a professional schedule. But again, make sure that you're thinking about what is best for you and what you think will help you out the most in the long run. What do you think you need at the moment? Do tons of research, really know what you're signing yourself up for one way or another, and you'll feel more prepared. And yeah, that is just about it. I hope you guys found this video kind of helpful because I know that this decision can be very confusing and you might be really afraid to make the wrong choice, but just know you have more time than you think you do. Your entire career is going to be a learning experience. So regardless of if you get to your program next year and you don't like it, you will still have things to learn. You will still grow from it, I promise. I used to have all of these regrets about how I handled my training and all of that stuff, and I kept telling myself, oh, I wish I had done this, that, or the other thing, but if I really think about it, I would not be where I am if it weren't for every single stage that I went through. So just look for ways that you can grow in every single class you take, whether it's in a conservatory program, in a trainee program, or with a professional company, or in a school. There's always something that you can learn. If you enjoyed this video or you found it helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. If you're trying to decide where you're gonna go next year, I would love to hear about it. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos similar to this one every single Monday, and actually I'm going to be probably posting some moving vlogs and ideas in the next coming weeks, so if that's something that you would find helpful, again, go ahead and subscribe, but you will of course see plenty of dance content. I hope you have a fantastic day and a great week. I will see you next Monday. That's a really big cloud. I'm supposed to be moving in just a couple weeks, and I'm really hoping that my new room will have more consistent lighting so that we won't have this problem as much. Okay.